In Russia, during the days of Joseph Stalin, and even up till now, there have been a tradition of one man perpetuating himself in office. The idea of one person getting to the helm of government and ruling society by his own ideas alone. What actually happens is that in such a context, you have a one party state and one man in government, and everybody kowtows to what one man says. The extreme of it is what we see in the government of North Korea, Kim Jong Un. But then we also see bits and pieces of it in different countries and governments. While democracy is not the best form of government that we can find, it's still the best expression of governance that the world has experienced up till this time. And one of the things that democracy is going to give you is that it's going to discourage a one party state. Now, what happens in a parliamentary system of government is that at parliament, there are different parties that come to government. People elect people. Yes, people to represent them. And then all of them come to the parliament and they debate issues. One party will be in government, but all the other parties have the opportunity to debate that. In Nigeria, we do not have a parliamentary government. What we have is an executive kind of government. The only opposition to the executive in government are the legislative arm of government and the judiciary. Unfortunately, the executive can become so powerful that it can put both the legislation and the judiciary under, so that a country, we can end up with just one man ruling the country. Now, what happens in a democracy is that there is opportunity for healthy opposition to come forth. Okay? While the opposition may not come from the legislation or the judiciary, usually the opposition will come from other parties. Unfortunately, in Nigeria, because the parties all share almost the same kind of ideology, is a money kind of ideology, where the only difference will be the individuals involved in the parties. Because of that, when one party or one government comes to power, all the others cannot or do not find a good reason to oppose the government in power. Okay, take for example, the APC is in power today. The PDP and even the Labour Party cannot effectively oppose the APC because at the roots, they all share the same ideas. They all have the same ideologies. So there's nothing to say, okay, APC, you used or you followed this kind of thinking and worldview. This is the result you are getting. Why don't you use something else? There's no way to oppose such ideas. They all share the same ideas, and so they cannot effectively oppose them. The only opposition that we have to government today is not in the other parties, it is in individuals. You and I. People in various places. And some of the people who have offered the best opposition to our government today has been our media houses. Okay? Towards the end of the government of President Buhari, the media house called Punch newspapers became quite an effective opposition to his government. And then eventually we began to have television stations like Arise News come forth and so on. In Arise News, an individual has been shining forth like a light in the midst of darkness. His name is Rufai Oseni, and that's the gentleman I want to talk about today. Now, a lot of people have spoken about Rufai Oseni, and an individual becomes a talking point when he almost has the same numbers of enemies as his friend. Okay, so Rufai has as many people opposing him as those who are defending him. And I think when you have such a situation, that person is an individual that is worth listening to. I began to listen to Rufai Oseni just before the election. And since then, by 8 p.m., 8 a.m. every day, when I have the opportunity, I get to listen to him. And his commentaries are always a blessing. Always a blessing. And it is surprising to me in the past few days that a lot of people are opposing Rufai. Don't forget that I say that some of the best opposition to a government or a country where a one party state is being threatened is when individuals, independent of party states, can come for or parties can come forth to oppose such a party system. Okay, and since we do not have worthy opposition in the Nigerian political space, we're depending on our media to be able to offer this opposition. That is how Rufai Oseni comes for. However, for Rufai, there's only one Achille heel that is being put against him. Only one thing that is being put against Rufai Oseni, and that is the incident on the BRT lane in Lagos, where he was said to have driven on a BRT lane. He was caught, and rather than apologizing, he also was resorting to the powers that be, the same powers he criticizes, okay, to deliver him out of the situation. The truth of the matter is that in that sense, the Rufai remained undefendable. And those of us who followed that story also know that Rufai came forth and apologized to the country. He apologized to his listeners. He accepted his wrong. And I do not know why that issue is being used against him till now. But of course, those people who have weak arguments would always want to look for something against somebody who has a sound argument. The issue of Rufai and the BRT lane has been swept away. It's not an issue at all. I think that we should be able to come down forth and be able to look objectively at the issues that Rufai Oseni is raising. Rufai Oseni has said over and over again that the Nigerian country, the Nigerian state is indebted. We are swimming in debt. I can't even remember the figures now, but every time he mentions it, my head almost goes, is almost swelling. Okay, this country is in debt. We're in such debt mess that our children's children may not be able to pay back. We're in a debt that a country that is not producing cannot offset. We're in such terrible debt. And it is Rufai that has warned against this. In all of this, it is not Rufai Oseni that made the dollar 1,000 naira. It is not his fault. It is not his driving against the BRT lane that led to it. The dollar is going for 1,000 naira in the parallel market because the Nigerian system is not producing. We have depended for too long on oil. Okay, and because we're not producing, we're not competing. Our currency is not competing in the international market. And because of that, our currency continues to lose value, even against African countries and their currencies. Okay, what do we have here? An interlude from our discussion so far. Have you heard of humanity? Oh, I'm not talking about the regular humanity of human beings, but the book that is written by my humble self, the Yusufu Humanity, which is going to be released by the grace of God in the month of November 2023. So this is just a short interlude telling you that you should look out for it and get ready to get your copies. There are going to be copies on Amazon. There are going to be copies on Sellers and Okada Books, and everywhere you can get online copies, you're going to get copies. And you would also be able to buy hard copies both online and in the nearest bookshop next to you. So watch out for it. Thank you very much. Okay, so that is not the fault of Rufai at all. These are things that we must look objectively at and deal with. Rufai Oseni is not at the root of the ravaging corruption in both the public and in the private life of this country. Rufai Oseni is not the one who has led this country to the situation where there are no jobs for our young people. Rufai Oseni is not the person who is causing for food prices to go out of the roof right now. Yesterday, I went to buy plastic chairs for the church that I pastor, and I was told that the chairs, could not be more than a certain price. By the time I went there, the cost was over 1,000% of what I bargained for. It is not the cost. I mean, Rufai Oseni is not the person who is causing for this skyrocketing. Okay? Rufai Oseni is not the person who is at the root of our young people leaving this country en masse. He's not the person who is encouraging Japa syndrome. He's not the person who is asking our young people to cross the Sahara Desert and to cross through Niger and to walk through Mali, to swim through oceans so as to get to Europe. Rufai Oseni is not the one doing all of this. All the young man is doing is to hold our leaders accountable. Recently, some billions upon billions and billions of naira was earmarked for somebody to buy a yacht. Okay? And by the time the people like Rufai and others cried out, that decision was rescinded. Okay, so if we do not have healthy opposition, if we do not have our political parties offering healthy oppositions, we're going to have to rely on independent personalities to do this. Because we're going to have to choose between one of two things. Either this country sinks or this country swims. And we also must be able to identify who the true enemies of this country are. Okay? The enemy of Nigeria is definitely not Rufai Oseni. That young man is adding to the intellectual debate. He's adding to the discourse in this country. He's adding to the productivity in this country. He's one of the people who probably has even helped the naira to stay afloat. Recently, Rufai was commending the Minister of Interior and talking about how well this young man is doing, how he have helped to offset so much of the backlog of passports. Okay, I can't remember the figures, but quite a lot of those passports were unattended to. This new minister came in and he offsetted them. And Rufai Oseni commended him and invited him to Arise News to commend him and told him, he said, look, the reward for good work is more work. Do more. Okay? So these people are adding to national discourse. And if they are critical of the way we are doing certain things in this country, it is for our own good. Rather than rising up and opposing such people, you listen to them and you take correction. There is a young man who cannot keep his home, married one woman, married another woman, okay, who came forth and thought he can criticize Rufai Oseni because he is a Nollywood star. Come on. These people, there's a world of difference. Such people don't even deserve a response. Okay? So the whole thing is before us. The other day I saw a video of a young Nigerian girl. She was weeping in faraway Canada. She was weeping. Why? Because she has a job. She has everything that she had always dreamed for, but she does not have community. It is one of the reasons why I can't live outside this country, because I need community. I need to talk to people. She doesn't have community. There's no boyfriend, there's no girlfriend, there's no anything. She's just by herself. 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. she's at work. And then she comes back home all by herself. She was almost losing her mind. My prayer was that somebody should find that girl and cater to her mental health. And such a young woman is outside the country rather than be in Nigeria with her family and church members or people who are close to her who can offer her mental stability. The other day, a nurse in the United Kingdom was filming the climate situation where she was. The whole place was frozen up and she was weeping and saying, ideally, she shouldn't be here. What's she doing here? The whole place is cold. What's she doing here? Okay? Is Rufai Oseni at the root of everybody leaving this country? Definitely not. The young man is adding to national discourse. Okay? So by all means, I want to plead with us. Leave Rufai Oseni alone. He is not the problem of Nigeria. Find your problems and solve them. Okay? And if our leaders cannot solve the problems of this nation, then the people should vote them out and vote in credible people. Now, if you have voted in people who cannot solve your problems, then live with it. You ask for it, you live with it. You don't blame somebody else for your own mess. Okay? So, by the way, my name is Deji Yesufu. I'm the pastor of Providence Reformed Baptist Church. I pastor people, spiritual things. I talk about spiritual things normally. But the people I pastor also go to the market. The people I pastor, they buy things. They're experiencing the inflation in town. They're also buying 700 naira fuel. Okay, they're entering bus and so on. In fact, it's so bad that sometimes we have to give some of them transportation to the church and back home and give them food money too. So while I minister to the spiritual needs of people, I also minister to the economic need. And that is why we have to fix this country. Because Nigeria has to work. If Nigeria does not work, there's no other option. And we cannot resort to violence. We can't resort to revolution. The only revolution we need right now as a country is a revolution of our minds. And people like Rufai Oseni are the people at the root of fixing our minds. They are the ones telling us that we can do things differently as a country. Thank you for listening.